Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all so much for joining us on today's Learning Lab. So today we're going to be going through how to get the most out of the purchasing module. And if we just flick onto the next page, I'll just do some introductions before handing you over. So Jack is going to be running today's session, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm Fiona, I work in the customer success team. Just before I hand you over to Jack, I'm just going to take you through some housekeeping. So for those of you that have joined before, you'll be very familiar with the housekeeping, but for anyone new to today's session, you will notice that throughout today's session, your microphones are going to be muted. However, there is a question panel on the GoToWebinar menu on the right-hand side of your screen. If you do have any questions as we go through today's session, please pop them in there and I can read those out at the end of the Learning Lab, or there will also be the opportunity to just take yourself off mute and you can ask any questions that you have at the end. And also this session today is being recorded, so for anyone who's unable to join, or if you want to keep this for reference, you will receive a copy of this Learning Lab via email at the end of the session. Please feel free to share that with any colleagues who are unable to join, or to keep in your files for later review. Okay, I think that is everything from me, so I'm going to hand you over to Jack to get started on today's session.
Well, thanks, Fiona. Hi everyone. So yeah, just going to run through some purchasing optimization, I suppose. What I've tried to do is I've added a range of different sort of functions within the purchase module. Some of this you may not have access to at the moment, others you may have it and you're just not utilising it at the moment. So if you've got any questions on sort of how you get access to these particular functions, just drop a note to Fiona and Co, and they'll get you sorted with it. But yeah, it's difficult to do a sort of a one-size-fits-all with this, just given that you'll have sort of different variations of the purchase module in terms of configuration. So just going to touch on AP automation. That's kind of the big new feature in purchasing at the moment. So you may have seen this in the last release that we covered off, but I'm just going to recap in terms of that functionality as well and do a short demo of that. Talk about cross-references, item cross-references. That kind of coincides with price lists as well, just in terms of, and delegation, I suppose, in terms of quite simple features that we're finding a lot of people are possibly overlooking or maybe just not utilising, but that can really add some good efficiency gains to your purchasing process. So we'll have a look at those in more detail as well. And then I'm going to have a look at dropship functionality as well, which just refers to that direct to consumer functionality. Does involve having order entry as well. So if you're one of the rare few that has just purchasing and you don't operate with a sales workflow as well, this may not be compatible. But it certainly can help with, again, speeding up that process of raising POs that go out to suppliers as and when you raise a sales order. It's going to effectively automate that process. So we'll put some examples up as well of those. Good. So we'll push on to first topic, which is just AP automation. So you may already have access to a variation of this through your standard accounts payable module. But the functionality with this has been extended to purchasing, so you can now utilise and lean on that machine learning to actually read incoming invoices or documentation to produce certain transaction definitions in systems. So what I'm going to do is come away from this slide and just go into system and explain a bit more detail around how that works. A few caveats or kind of variations to how this works with accounts payable. So I'll just start off with those. Obviously, if you were just working with AP automation in accounts payable, you just have the functionality to upload an invoice directly into the accounts payable module. So you wouldn't be able to create POs or anything, obviously, through here. It's just looking at when you get an invoice from a supplier, you can go ahead and hit this upload and drop it into here. Purchasing works a little bit differently. So if I just go into configuration, don't worry too much about this, we can help you with the setup on it. But I just want to show you the example of kind of what the purchasing functionality is doing here. So With purchasing, obviously, you've got your workflows. Again, these will come in all shapes and sizes, but typically you'll have some form of purchase requisition or purchase order that then converts into subsequent stages, normally ending up with an invoice. So in this particular system, I've got a really basic setup of just purchase order that converts into a purchase invoice. So that's what I'm going to be working through in the example today. So in terms of configuration for this, what you'll actually do, and you can do this on a per entity basis. So if you wanted to produce different workflows in different entities, you can do that. So for example, I've got one set up in top level, and I've also got one set up for this particular entity. So I could even introduce a different one for another entity down here. I could target something else. I don't have any transaction definitions set up for this particular entity, so you'll see this is blank. So all this is doing is you'll effectively pick a source. So this is effectively asking you to tell me which document you've created or transaction definition you've created previously in system. What this is then going to do is it's going to match. So my target here in this specific example is the invoice. So with my automation in this entity, I've told it that I've created a PO in system. I want you to match to that existing PO and create the corresponding purchase invoice associated with that PO. So the system's actually going to be able to go ahead and look for an existing PO in system, match to it, and create the relevant purchase invoice. So rather than you having to go through that conversion workflow through your different transaction definitions, this is going to automate that process and actually convert the PO into the purchase invoice via an external document effectively. So that's your big difference between your purchasing automation setup and your standard AP setup, just going to invoices, whereas this can work with different transaction definitions in system. So I'm going to leave that as is because I'm happy with the configuration I've got on there. So I'm just going to come out of here. I'm going to actually go ahead and do an example of this. So I'm going to drop into my entity level, so just into E100, and then I'm going to navigate over to purchasing. And then just for the sake of this example, I'm going to show you which PO I've created. So like I say, you do need an existing document for this. So I have created one in advance. So effectively, I've created a purchase invoice document that's compatible with this purchase order that I raised. So you can see here, standard process would have been I've come in, I've created my purchase order, put all these details in, I've checked over, I'm happy with what it's got. So I've just got a couple of items. I'm a consultancy firm and I've got a shipping fee, just randomly to add something else in there, and we've got a bit of tax, etc. So that's my PO that I posted earlier, and we can see it sat in a status of pending. So that is ready to be converted into a purchase invoice. So rather than me having to go through that process, my supplier has provided me with an invoice document. So rather than manually processing that, I'm just going to go ahead and go to automated transactions. I'm just going to go over to the upload button here. I'm going to upload the document. So you can see there's quite a few examples already in here that are drafted. So when you are working with this module, this is where all of your automated transactions are going to show up. So anything that you've uploaded to system will appear in this menu. You can track the progress, which I'll show you shortly, and you can view that information obviously once it's been created. Does also help with this identifier column as well to understand if there has been any issues during the upload as it's read the information and any queries that it's picked up, it'll go ahead and identify them in this exceptions column. So for example, this has got resolve where it wants you to go in and just input some additional information on the invoice itself. We've also got a duplicate here where the system's been able to work out we've already got an existing invoice for this. It's been uploaded twice for the same amount, etc. So it's querying whether you actually need it. And you can obviously action off the back of that as well. So, and that probably will be what you'll need to do when this first gets up and running. So it is running off AI and machine learning technology. So it is created with the idea that you feed this system with more information. The more information it's fed, the better it'll get at creating your transactions. It'll start to pick up on patterns, invoice layouts. If there's a particular invoice style that you're receiving multiple times from suppliers, it'll start to pick up and get better at picking out the information from there. So it's definitely one where I'd say work with it over the first few months, you know, put the effort into uploading the data. It may not get everything 100% accurate to start with, but as you correct it as well, it will remember those corrections that you've made and try to almost take that information on board and learn from it. So I'd say it's almost like a work in progress type of thing where it'll get better the more you use it. So I'm just going to go ahead and upload my example. It's defaulted to my location because that's the one that I'm sat in. And then I'm just going to browse for all the files. So you can upload up to 30 documents at a time. So I could pick up to 30 invoices here and process them all at once. So again, massive efficiency gains there if you do opt to use this. I've just got my auto PO example here. So it's just a PDF invoice that I've created earlier. I'm just going to go ahead and tag it. I can see it's successfully uploaded by this message, and all of my uploaded documents are going to appear in this table down here. So it'll tell you the progress. Again, if you've got 30, invoice documents tend to be quite small in terms of the file size, so it should be pretty quick, but you can track the progress from this screen here. And I can also delete them as well from here. So if there's maybe a couple in here that I don't want to go ahead and process yet, I could just delete them off the list, so that I'm just ready to go with the ones that I want to at this point. Once you've got that green message and the progress is 100% on here, we're good to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit upload. And what's going to happen is you may not necessarily see anything instantly here, but if you do hit this refresh button, you'll very quickly see that an additional line's been created. This is effectively, this would populate, so if I had 30 here, you'd obviously see 30 new lines. We've just got the one. So you can see here that it's in a state of analysing. So the system's now just working through that invoice that I've uploaded. It's populating that information to obviously create the transaction in system. Excuse me, sorry, I lost my voice then. Time taken to actually complete this progress will vary massively. Should be relatively quick with me only having a single invoice. There we go, it's already finished. So I can see here that it's matched up to that PO that we had earlier, that PO1. It's gone ahead and populated all the other information. It's put it into a state of draft. So I do need to go in there and actually have a look at it and sense check the information before I go ahead and post it. So if I just go ahead and hit the edit button here, I can see all the information that's populated. My particular view as well is just configured to be able to see any attachment documents in this window here. Again, I probably recommend switching to this. You can do it in your user preferences when you're working with AP automation, because it does just allow you to sense check the information that's on the printed invoice document compared to what it's actually produced in system. So I can sense check, obviously, my amounts, etc. I can see that all looks good. What else have we got? We've got our supplier, which is picked up on. All the information's input. It knows which PO this has come from. Picked up all this information, date due, etc. And it has also picked up on the tax as well. This does break off the table, so I can't show you the other bit over here, but it's calculated the tax element as well accordingly. So I'll just close that off so you can see here. So that's effectively automated that process of creating this. So all I need to do now is go ahead and hit post, and then we're good to go. We've created an invoice. So this particular scenario, I've got a department restriction on this GL code, so it's asked me to go ahead and fill that in. Again, another important reason why it's good that it brings this into draft. For example, obviously a supplier invoice may not have that additional information on it, such as a department. You may need to add that additional information to it before you can go ahead and post. So I'm just gonna proceed without going through that. But effectively, you would have gone through the post function, and that would have just posted into system. I can also see these from my purchase invoice screen as well. So you can see this draft is sat here, so it has gone ahead and produced that. And then once I do post that invoice, this will go ahead and say, you can see it's changed to a state of in progress, which means I've got an outstanding purchase invoice, which is associated with this. So once I've gone ahead and posted that purchase invoice, this will update to converted, and that process is complete. So that's my purchasing automation. That's it in its basic form. What I would highly suggest is go and have a look on the help center and just have a look at the restrictions that do come with that. There's just a couple of limitations, I guess, or specific config requirements that are needed in order to work with AP automation. The main one being sequential numbering on your documentation. So with your PO numbers and your purchase invoice numbers in this particular example, if I wanted to use those in my automation workflow, I just need to ensure that I'm letting the system dictate the sequential numbering in there, so it can basically create that number for me rather than needing input from external users to create that. So definitely just worth having a look at this page and just checking if there's any other restrictions that you need to consider. There's obviously a subscription element tied to that as well, so just keep that in mind. You'd need to get this provisioned. But that's pretty much it for AP automation. So I'm just going to jump into the next topic. I'll try to move through these ones fairly quickly with us not having too much longer left. So item cross-references, again, may have been one that you were introduced to during your purchasing setup. Massively underutilized. We don't see a lot of use for this. Obviously, there's quite a few scenarios where people may not necessarily need this. But what I would say is, particularly if you work with heavily in inventory, item cross-references can become really useful. Particularly for users that are maybe just focusing on data input, and they're not too familiar with your item lists and your system setup, for example. So what this will allow you to do is create an additional reference or name identifier for an item. So if I go ahead and hit, it's just sat within, and this comes as standard within system, just under purchasing and setup under cross-references, will bring me to this page. So I'd see a list of them within here. I don't have any at present, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit add. And what this does is you can go ahead and pick the reference type. So customer and supplier relates to customer specific or supplier specific terminology. So in this case, I'm going to create a consulting supplier reference. So I might call this consulting in my system, but my supplier, and I can do this for specifically per supplier as well. So let's say for Thompson's Electricals, they define what I would call a consulting item on a line, on an invoice, as let's call it contractor service. So I'm going to go ahead and add that as a cross-reference for this particular item. So what I'm telling the system here is whenever I'm working with Thompson Electricals, they may refer to this item as a contractor service rather than consulting. So this is really useful for example, if someone comes in to create a purchase order, and I'm maybe not too familiar with the different terminologies that we've got for our items in system, and I'm working with Thompson Electricals, and they've said, you know, they've given me an invoice and it says contractor service on it, and I'm not sure, you know, which item out of all my items does that relate to. Well, instead of worrying about that or trying to track that down, I can just put in the contractor service item cross-reference, and the system will go ahead and allocate the correct item for me. So it saves me having to think about that conversion process of what a supplier or customer might call an item versus what I'm calling it in our system. Again, can really speed things up from a data input if you're just having to worry about the name that you're seeing on an invoice. What I'd also recommend is, I believe as well, the AP automation system should be able to pick up on these. So again, from an automation perspective, when it's reading those supplier provided invoices, if you've got all of your item cross references set up correctly, let's say we receive an invoice from Thompson Electricals and it's got contractor service written on it, it should be able to actually identify that and allocate it to the correct item and system. So again, really speeding up that process of when you're having to look at items in draft, invoices in draft, and sense check the actual item that's been used is correct. If you've got this set up and you're utilising it properly, it should take away the need for that. So that's cross-references. It does also refer to, you can create alternative items or upgrades and kind of downgrades of those items as well as sort of shortcut paths. I won't touch on that in this session because we have enough time to go through it, but that's another good use case, particularly if you're into kind of your full inventory setup as well. Can be really useful for when you need to quickly offer an alternative item to one that's maybe out of stock. Purchase order approval delegation improvements. Again, delegation in general is just a quick note to say we don't see it used quite very often, and it can massively save time or any complications with when people are out of office. It's a really useful feature to have that delegation in place. It just means that you can automate that process of when someone goes on holiday or someone takes time off work, who's going to pick up that approval workflow. So if you are utilising approvals, I would definitely say have a look into setting up your delegation. So you can do this by coming into purchasing, make sure you're at your highest level, top level, and then if you jump into the configuration page, and if you scroll down to sort of the midpoint, you'll see this enable purchasing approval option. When I tick that on, you can obviously set up your proper approvals, and then you've also got the enable delegation here. So I'm just going to tick that, and then as you see when I tick that, it then allows me to manage those. I'm going to go ahead and hit manage. Really good new feature that they've added, again, that came with the new release, is restricted users can be part of this delegation now. So they don't necessarily have to have direct access to the typical areas that the usual approver would have access to. So restricted users can be involved in delegation now to temporarily pick up approvals that they normally wouldn't. And you have also got user groups as well. So it doesn't just have to be a one-to-one basis with users. I can actually assign my delegation to a whole group of users. So let's say, for example, this is my user, and I want to tell the system when I'm on holiday, rather than relying on, you know, Peter to pick up all of my approvals. He could be out of office as well, for example. I can actually pick a user group to assign that delegation to. So in this case, I've just got an AP admin team set up. So everyone that works in AP is associated with this user group. So I can just go ahead and allocate it to them, which means, you know, instead of just that single user, I've now got maybe 5 different users that can temporarily pick up my approvals whilst I'm out of office. Again, just saves time with having to arrange that, having to have any complications around delays to your purchasing workflow because someone's gone off and you know, maybe you haven't set up delegation and you're having to wrestle with the approval policies to get those amended. Will save a lot of time and a lot of headaches with your approvals if you do go ahead and get delegations set up. So I highly recommend that one. Dropship, I'll very quickly show you an example of this. We're running out of time, but effectively just automates that process of creating a purchase order when you raise a particular sales order, and also directing that delivery to that particular customer. So I've got Dropship set up and config. Again, if you've got any questions on that or wanted guidance on how that's set up, just reach out. But I've just got this set up to Intacct. So whenever I raise a sales order and I mark it as a dropship, it's going to create an associate purchase order to go alongside that. So I'm just going to quickly, and again, I know this is going into order entry, but it obviously ties in with your purchasing. I'm just going to raise a sales order very quickly for any customer, and then I'm going to pick my usual consulting item, and let's say it's just one of these, and this is going to be £50 or 500. Let's leave it at that. Why not? And you can see here this dropship column has appeared because this item is enabled for dropship. So if I tick that and then I go into my show details and I tag a specific supplier, the system's then going to know, we'll stick with the Thompson Electricals. System's then going to know you want to create an associated purchase order against this supplier for this item. So when I go ahead and post, you can see my sales order here, which I've got and I can process. But if I jump into my purchasing, my purchase orders, you can see here it's created a purchase order on my behalf. It's referenced that sales order as well. So I can go ahead and kickstart that process straight away of ordering that item. You can see who it's paid to and I can see who it's delivered to as well. Within here, so it's going to go ahead and process that so you can get that direct to consumer process done as well. I just need to obviously carry through the workflow here. So that's my purchase order, kind of my dropship automation process. So again, you can make some massive efficiency gains by utilizing that particular module. It is an additional module or an additional feature as well. So just keep in mind that you'll need to get that subscription as well. And just before we wrap up, just wanted to quickly touch on price lists. Again, a feature that we're not seeing too much adoption of, but can really save a lot of time with having to input prices for items. So you should have a base price list set up in system anyway when you go into price lists. So there'll be some form of initial price list in here. And it's as simple as just coming in and tagging an item. Do this at top level. Coming in and tagging an item with a price within this price list. So I can have as many price lists as I want, and I can allocate these to suppliers as well. So I might have a range of different suppliers that supply the same product, but they might charge me different amounts. So I can go ahead and just pick a start and end date for this particular item. Let's say it's start of the month to the end. And let's say my consulting item for this month, it costs me 200. I can make it much longer if I needed to. I'm just going to go ahead and click save. So now what this is going to do is, for any transaction definitions that I've allocated this initial price list to, going to go ahead and use that price list information to auto populate the prices when I'm inputting information against it. So that initial price list, I've just got this test one in here. So hopefully when I go to raise a PO, you're going to see that pick a random supplier. When I pick this item, it's now come up with that £200. So again, it's just automating that process. Maybe I just want to put in the quantity and the item. It'll know the extended price. It can calculate that for you. Like I said, you can allocate these to supplier specific as well. So my combination of supplier and item could dictate a specific price for that item. Again, just saves time with having to input and trace back, how much am I paying for a particular item. I can just have a set of price lists that are good to go. And again, referring back to that AP automation function as well, it will help it with identifying prices for particular items as well. It can speed up that process. Or if you've got a bizarre invoice that didn't have pricing on it, the theory is you would be able to, as long as it's got a pricing system, you'd be able to identify the item and the quantity and at least calculate based off price lists how much that particular invoice would cost. So those are kind of apologies, I've run a little bit over, but those are effectively some really heavily underutilized areas of the system in terms of price lists, cross-reference and delegation. Dropship and AP automation are fairly popular, but definitely you can get some massive efficiency gains out of them. So if you haven't already started utilizing those, I'd highly recommend looking into them. But that's everything I had to run through today. So I'll pass over to Fiona, and then we can go through Q&A and finish up.
Super, thanks Jack, thanks for going through all of that with us. Yeah, as Jack mentioned, we can open up now for questions, so if you do have any questions, feel free to take yourself off mute and you can ask away. I'll just check in the question panel as well if any have been logged in there. No, it doesn't look like any have come through at the moment, so if you do have any, just take yourself off mute. We'll give that a moment for any questions to come through. Okay, I can't see anyone type in, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop myself or support team a message after today's session and we'll get back to you. Okay, so thank you all for joining. I hope you did enjoy today's session. Our next learning lab is going to be on the 24th of April, and that's going to be on building reports and dashboards. Hopefully you're able to join us. If you're not able to join, but it is a session that you're interested in, then please do get registered for the session and you'll be sent a copy of the recording once the session's complete. If you have any ideas or suggestions for future topics that you'd like to see, also please do email me. We appreciate any feedback and any suggestions. So my email address is on the screen there, fiona@acuity24.com. Please do email me with any questions, suggestions or feedback. I appreciate hearing all of that. That's everything from us. So thanks again to Jack for putting that on for us. That was a great learning lab. Hope you've all found the session useful and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care. Bye.